What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL. Joined as always by my main man, Jonathan. Jonathan, what's going on, brother?
Man, it is a beautiful day today, and just continuing to live the life. So
Huh?
it's been all good.
Yeah, no, it's been a good weekend so far. We're recording this particular video on a Sunday to come out later on in the week, but yeah, been a good weekend. Beautiful weather. Actually kid free for a few more hours, which is kind of nice. Don't get that too often, you know.
Well, so because we're doing this on Sunday, just on the off chance that some weird rumors pop up between now and whenever we post this thing, that's the reason why
Right.
we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, and
Just saying.
if we have to, I'll go back and do a quick edit or what have you. If
Hi, this is future JR.
that's right,
Let
exactly.
you know
Coming
that
in with
yeah,
a
we were really stupid to say this because that guy now has resigned, and we should have known that,
that's
and
right.
yada yada yada.
Exactly. So what we're talking about is that, like, just like our O-line video last Friday,
Yep.
we're continuing in the potential free agent ad like series that we're doing. Um, and this week we're going with skill positions. Like I said, we were going position group by position group, giving you a couple names that we think could really help out the team and could potentially be available. So we're going to move into the skills position group, which is wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. All the and then I think we're going to like throw in some. We're going to lump in quarterbacks in here as well, but yeah. So let's just, without much further ado, go ahead and jump on into it. John, you want to kick off with one of yours, or you want me to start with mine? What you want to do there, bud?
I can go ahead and start off here.
All right.
Let me pull him up real quick. I just need to do something. I meant to have him up here, but we had some
Unacceptable behavior.
we had some technical issues.
Yeah, we were fighting with OBS and Skype before actually getting this going, so y'all have to bear with us on that one. The technical issues never fail.
They do not. All right. So the first guy I want to talk about, which, when I was looking through some of the list of stuff, a guy that I think probably has a decent chance of, and that's what I tried to target with my two guys. Two guys I think probably have a decent chance of actually making it to free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Things could change. You never know. But first guy on the list is Miami Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki.
Right.
Really like the guy. 2022 or 2021 had an outstanding year. Great stats all around. Unfortunately, this year kind of had a downturn in production, though technically in the touchdown area, he actually has like 3 more touchdowns this year than he did the previous year, even though he had way more receptions, way more yards in 2021. But like, on average, we're looking at, 2 to 3 receptions a game this past season. They had a new head coach, different philosophy. They had Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that's what something I was going to bring up there was the fact that, like, I think last year he was about one of their only receiving options. And so
they still had Jalen Waddle.
he was hurt a good bit last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was hurt. He was hurt some of the year.
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, he had way more production the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, different coach, different
philosophies, different
philosophies.
you had multiple stretches this year where their main quarterback was down, with concussions and stuff like that. So he recorded a 362 yards, 32 receptions, and 5 touchdowns, which is okay. It's not bad. But like you said, the year before he had a much better, production in yardage. He's mainly a receiving tight end, so that would be interesting bringing him in with what we have in Pitts. But
yeah,
he could play almost like not wide receiver two, but reception receiver two role. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like with
Yes.
with the way Arthur Smith likes to use tight ends, in the
Mhm.
passing game, if he can give you stuff in the blocking aspect, which I would have to go back and look and see like what kind of blocker he is. I don't think he's a strong blocker, but
No.
if he can bring you some more stuff in the blocking aspects, then that may open up the receiving aspect in the game
Yeah.
design.
Now, and you got to remember Arthur Smith is also a former tight ends coach, so he may see where this guy could be a better blocker with a little bit better development. Maybe I don't know who his coach has been to this point. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how good a coach this guy is with regards to tight ends. We know Arthur Smith pretty good with tight ends,
Right.
both blocking tight ends and receiving threats. So he may feel like this is a guy I can bring in, and we can get him to be competent at blocking. We don't need him to be a road grader. We don't need him, to be that kind of tight end. But the problem that I saw I didn't go through the full games, but I watched a couple of games with him, and the biggest problem I saw was in obvious running downs. He's not there.
Right.
Um, I don't know that I saw very many running plays at all when he was on the field. So that kind of tips your hand a little bit with that kind of a situation. Though, there's other players on other teams and every team's got a guy that's probably like that a little bit. It just depends on how much production now you get a guy like that from 2021 with that kind of production and you bring him on the field and people are like, oh, it's a pass, but it doesn't matter because you still get the production out of it, then it doesn't really
Right.
matter. But yes, that is kind of the downside to Gesicki, at least to this point, is at least in the games that I watched, was not very heavily involved in the running game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when he is involved in the game, he really good route runner, really good hands. He's got good speed. And my thought here is what we saw a lot of times with Gesicki is he would still get a lot of coverages that would get him onto tight ends, or I mean onto linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so the thought started going in my head. The one thing that with Pitts is even if he's in line, they generally like put a safety or a cornerback on him.
Right.
They're not going to put a tight end or I keep saying, I don't know why I did. They're not going to put a linebacker on him because he's going to smoke just about any
Right.
linebacker on the
Mm-hmm.
field, with very rare few exceptions. Um, so what I could see happening is you run sort of a two tight end set where you have Gesicki and Pitts on the field, and through like alignment, like based on what you see the defense giving you, through motion and alignment scheming up and stuff like that, could you figure out a way where initially what they see Pitts and Gesicki on the field, and you say, okay, we're going to have the safety on Pitts, linebacker on Gesicki, and then through various motions and scheming and what have you, maybe you can get him to flip their
Right.
responsibilities. So now you have a safety on Gesicki and a linebacker on Pitts, which is a ginormous mismatch for the vast majority of the league. And so I could see like that way to like help to get your guy easier opportunities to be productive. So that's my thought process
Yeah.
when it comes to Gesicki on that. And I just think you have because I do think we're going to do a wide receiver at least somewhere in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully maybe day one, but probably day 2 or 3.
Right.
Uh, and maybe we bring in, and I know you're going to talk about some guys. Maybe we bring in some free agency wide receivers to be the wide receiver too. So then you talk about having Pitts, Gesicki, London, whoever wide receiver 2 is, Allgeier, probably a running back. Whether I would say probably in the draft. Although the other guy that I'm going to talk about, I wouldn't mind seeing him come in, but I don't necessarily think that we're going to go that route. So
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah,
Gesicki would be an interesting option, especially if you feel like you strike out in the wide receivers two area, or if like the trend continues from last year where guys like Russell Gage and Christian Kirk are commanding a ton of money, and if somebody like a Gesicki doesn't command nearly as much, and then you can kind of treat him like a wide receiver too, a bigger body who could, if you can, convince him, coach him up, whatever you want to call it, get him uh, at least being a halfway decent blocker. So,
right. Now another guy I would actually love to see. Um, I didn't I didn't look at any film on him because I know who he
right.
is. I know what he can do, and whether or not he makes it to free agency, don't know. Austin Hooper,
Yeah.
potential free
Yeah.
agent.
That could be fun and interesting. I don't know if he would want to even come back to Atlanta the way he left here. But, you know,
Different
oh yeah,
regime,
yeah.
different
No, I got it.
everything.
But a
So
lot of his vitriol was like actually like at the fans. So that's a lot of his comments were directed, but that's, whatever. That's neither here nor there. But yeah,
yeah,
like if you're wanting to treat tight end two, like wide receiver two, somebody like a Hooper or a Gasicki could make a lot of sense. So you want to,
but then there's also like Evan Ingram, Dalton
oh
Schultz,
yeah,
those
those
guys,
guys.
especially Evan Ingram would be like a mini
Oh yeah,
Pitts.
definitely. I think
Uh,
I
yeah,
don't think he actually leaves Jacksonville, to be honest. I think they really liked
probably
what he
not.
got in it, got out of them in Jacksonville, and I think he actually stays there. Do you want to go ahead and move on to your next guy?
Sure. Josh Jacobs. Main reason why I say that is pull this guy up.
Well, while you're pulling that up, like
Uh,
if you like what Algier brought you, but you're really wanting a lead dog, in a sense, like that's what Josh Jacobs is. I mean, at 1,653 yards on 340 attempts with 400 yards receiving on 53 receptions and a total of 12 touchdowns. Like, Josh Jacobs was about the only reason why the Raiders scored last year.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he had a game where it was against Seattle. They ended up winning that game 40-34. He had 33 attempts for 229 yards, 6.9 average, long of
Right.
86, two touchdowns. I mean, the guy did it all in that game, and he averaged 12.3 just overall. Sorry, 12.3 receiving yards per reception. So he had like six receptions for 74 yards with a long of 28. I mean, the guy did everything that game. So, I like him. And, if we were to get him at a reasonable price, I don't know if that's possible. But if we were to get him at a exact, yeah. Uh, but if we were to get him at a reasonable price, I think he's a guy that, could, help us with making sure Algier doesn't get run
Mm-hmm.
down. But then again, he does have a little bit more of that home run
Right.
threat to him than Algier does. So there is, you bring him in, probably do a lot. He'd still do a lot of receiving because he's a really good receiver out of the backfield. So there's a whole lot of things you can do with him. Whether or not he makes it out, don't know.
Yeah, that's gonna
100%.
be interesting. Like, do they tag him? What have you? Like a lot of these guys we talk about, all of them could end up being locked back up by their team, or what have you. Like we're thinking about like who you could add if they are available, kind of deal.
Right. And now the reason why I looked at Josh Jacobs and I said, okay, let's go take a look at this guy was I know at the beginning of the year he seemed to be in McDaniel's
Yes,
doghouse.
that's
Like he started and played a ton of the Hall of Fame game, which
was
no
crazy.
other starter really did. Um, Played a lot in the preseason just in general from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, he had a lot of wear and tear this year with, like you said, 340 attempts. That's a lot of attempts.
Right. That's
Uh,
that's something like you're running this guy into the ground. Plus, if you look at like if McDaniel's carries anything over from his Patriot days, Like, they didn't really pay running backs. So they may be very well let him walk out, especially with them looking like they're going to like rebuild that roster with letting Derek Carr go and things like that. This could be another guy that just walks, and if he walks, everybody's going to clamor. Oh, you got CP84. Oh, you got Tyler Allgeier. Oh, you got Avery Williams and Cable Huntley. Folks, if Arthur Smith is going to stay a run heavy team, which benefits a young quarterback, say we do go with Ritter, right? Run game benefits, Ritter, then like we're going to add another back. Like whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, I'm just trying to like mentally prepare y'all for the fact that, another back is going to get added. If you add, like say you add Josh Jacobs to the room, now we were talking about the chess piece type stuff with Gesicki. Now you can do that same kind of chess piece stuff with Cordell Patterson. You could split him out, in the slot and have him, you could have Jacobs and Patterson flanking, whoever the, quarterback is. And they're not going to, because both of them are solid receivers, they're not going to be able to key in on who may be going out in a pattern. So I know, like I said, I know a lot of people are going to like kind of balk at it, but there's a theory behind it that makes that make sense. It just depends on how you want to use them. I like the idea myself.
Yeah, I like Josh Jacobs. I just don't know if he's gonna come in at the right price for us. If he even makes it. Right. This is all on the assumption that he really was in McDaniels's doghouse. Maybe he was early, then wasn't because he basically became the offense. But if that's the case, and maybe it's a situation where he balled out, they want him back, but now he's like, I don't want to come back.
Y'all the way y'all did me at the beginning.
I'll make plenty of money going somewhere else where somebody's not going to start me in the Hall of Fame game. So there's that. A couple of guys on the kind of secondary guys. I didn't, go super deep on it, but I just kind of took a look at it. These guys, I think, would be very good complements to Allgeier in that Algier's the bruiser, he's the bulldozer. These guys are a little more like the little worker bees that. Yeah, the lightning to the thunder, and that's a guy like Devin Singletary, Miles Sanders, those guys, especially. I personally really, really like Singletary. I think he's a great receiver. I think he runs the ball really well, though he quite hasn't lived up to what I guess Buffalo thought he was going to be, where maybe he was going to be the workhorse guy. But here in Atlanta, whether it's Allgeier and maybe the current stable of guys, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's free agency, whoever comes in, unless they absolutely just completely outshine everybody. But even then, they're probably still not going to be the workhorse in that they take the 90% of the snaps. It's going to be a by committee thing. It just is. And I think Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary both, whether or not Miles Sanders leaves, totally different matter. I mean, he may just really love the atmosphere in Philadelphia.
Yeah. I mean, winning a championship
really want to stay. It does,
Well, they didn't, but still going to play. That's what I meant.
Well, and maybe he feels like, man, we were so close. Let's run it back. Let's try it again. And maybe he takes a little bit of a deal, or they structure it a little bit better so he doesn't quite make as much early on, but potential for later. There's all kinds of different things, but like Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Tony Pollard, those are guys that if any one of those become available and at the right price, I'd be totally fine with having one of those guys in here to let them, let Allgeier pound on him for the first half of the game, then bring those guys in for like change of pace kind of situations, tired legs. And then once you kind of hit him with the lightning strikes with those guys, you bring Allgeier back in, and nobody's wanting to tackle anybody.
Nobody's wanting to tackle Allgeier in the fourth quarter. So I think there is like I said, there's a thought process, and there is a definite strategy to bring in more backs if you're going to be this run heavy of a team. So,
Yep.
as you kind of alluded to earlier, some of the guys that I was looking at, is like, I really do feel like we're going to need a wide receiver too. I
Yep.
don't think, like, given the chance, OZ didn't necessarily step up like I was hoping. Now, whether that's quarterback play or what have you, maybe it looks a little different had you had Ritter in like the majority of the year. But nonetheless, I'm looking to like kind of upgrade that particular position. And one of the first guys that come across, like he's been almost like a Russell Gage in the sense of a core special teamer, but in the last year or so, he's really started to come on as a viable second option, and that's Noah Brown from the Dallas Cowboys. Now he's had to step up in like the absence of Amari Cooper, in times where Michael Gallup was injured, things like that. And last year, like these numbers aren't like blow you away. It was 555 yards on 43 receptions and 3 touchdowns. But to me, that's solid number two numbers. And what I like
Yeah.
about Noah Brown is he's a bigger receiver, which I think
Hmm.
Arthur Smith, off the guys that they brought in free agency last year that didn't stick, but you had guys like Auden Tate and Brian Edwards and some of those guys. It was apparent that he wanted a bigger body, receiver in that receiver room, and Noah Brown like kind of fits that build. And a lot of his routes that I watched were like very much like the in breaking like slants and digs coming across the field.
Yep.
My only concern with Noah Brown is in the couple games that I watched, each game he had a uh, like a weird fumble that then got popped up out of his hands and then got picked off by the other team. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's worrisome in a sense because they were just
Yep.
both of them were just weird. Like if you remember the Jacksonville game where the Cowboys played lost to the Jags in overtime, that pick six that walked them off came off the hands of Noah Brown. So that's like my big concern there with him. But
Yeah.
if the if the wide receiver market doesn't do what it did last year, where you saw guys like Gage getting $30 million for 3 years, because I don't think Noah Brown's worth $10 million a year. But if that's where like wide receiver two market money is, then maybe we just draft one and keep it
Yeah.
moving. But he does seem to be like a good contested catch guy, willing blocker. I think he fits the mold that Arthur Smith is or should be looking for as far as
Right.
a good complement to Drake London. Now, like I said,
Yeah.
like we said before, it's wide receiver two in numbers, like reception three, and for a reception getter number three, I think Noah Brown, the numbers bear out that when given the opportunity, he has, produced. This past year was his career year, but it seemed like he was finally given the opportunity to make that happen. So,
Yeah. He's 6'2",
right,
225.
big body,
Guys got that body, like you said, with the in breaking routes. Try to use that body to keep to shield the ball from the
yep.
cornerbacks. If the guy, granted, if the guy does a lot of, I don't know like how fast he's supposed to be.
He's not a burner, and that's the thing is like, a lot of people feel like the wide receiver two needs to be a burner. But I don't know how much that actually bears out. But there was, plenty of plays where he was able to get on top of the defense. So
Yeah.
he's got decent enough speed, but he's not like rip the top off the defense kind of speed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It probably, I could see him being a guy that's like, it's like that sneaky fast
Mm-hmm.
speed. He's such a big guy. You don't expect him to necessarily get up to that top speed very
Right.
quickly. And even that top speed, you're not expecting to be as much. So I could see him, but also, you put him out there with the Pitts and in London and maybe even Patterson out of the backfield. There's a lot of eyes on a lot of other
Right.
guys. Like I could see that guy, getting stuck with like single coverage. Now, at that point, can he beat that single coverage? If he does, potentially big plays. So I have I would have no problems bringing this guy in. Again, I'm not sure if I want to pay him, $10 million a year, if that's what he's asking for.
That's the tough part, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I get it. Like, look, man, ask and try to get as much
get
as you
your money,
possibly
bro.
can. Get your bag. But at the end of the day, do I think, he could come in and be the wide receiver 2 for us? I think he could. I'm not 100% sure. And so at that point, it's like, do we want to put that money out there on him?
That's kind of the thing. But and that's going to be the caveat with all these guys. Like you hear say, if the money's right, like they have to determine if the money's right for them. So my second guy, staying in the wide receiver realm, I was glad that you went tight end and running back, because like when we set up to do this, I had already thought that I'm looking for a wide receiver too, like regardless. And so like that's what I'm trying to fix. And so my next guy is DJ Chark out of Detroit. Another young guy, had a couple real good years in Jacksonville. Kind of fell out of favor there with all the regime changes and everything else, and spent last year up in Detroit, and it was so-so year in Detroit. He had 502 yards on 30 receptions with 3 touchdowns. Now he's a little bit more of a burner, not at I think he's like 6'4", 194. So he's not as, you can double check that for me if you will, but he's not as like big of a body. More of a getting your way on the run game, not necessarily actually run blocking. But he seemed to have a little bit better top end speed, which I thought could be useful. Shifty enough route runner. Had, like I said, in Jacksonville a couple years back, he had over 1,000 yards receiving. Then followed it up with like 800 or 900 yards the next year. So he's had some like ankle issues, which kept him out of some games up there in Detroit. I think he missed like 5 or 6 games. So that's something to consider, but that might be something that makes him more affordable for us. Like, if he's missed games,
might be like a prove it deal kind of
exactly.
Guy.
He might be
like, hey, you fell off last year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Let's see if you could do it. Let's see if you can get back up to where you were in say like 2020 or 2019, and if you can, maybe we can look at a bigger deal. But
he's
for now not so
much. He's definitely a like prove it deal that Fontenot likes to hand out, the 1 year, 2 year deals. That Fontenot has handed out so thus far, that they have talked about, like the Cordell Pattersons, the potential of like Lorenzo Carter and those guys. But he's another one that I think like fits that candidacy to be a guy who is more of a prove it type deal, but years in the league, knows how to play the position of wide receiver at an NFL level, could be a good, mentor, so to speak, to Drake London, who will be coming into his second year. Not that I think Drake London needs a mentor per se, but, you have a guy in the room, who is talented, and who can and who has, put up yards and put up receptions, in the league. I think that could be a boon for the wide receiver room. But like I said, regardless if there's like other honorable mentions like Corey Davis, who spent time in Tennessee with Arthur Smith. There's heavily rumors that the Jets might move on from him. He's not a free agent as of yet, but if he does become available, he automatically becomes the top of my list as, having familiarity as wide receiver 2 for Arthur Smith. He immediately jumps to the top of my list. So, that's part of like, unfortunately for us doing this still kind of like a month out, there's still some like unknowables, some factors that we're unforeseen. But as of right now, Noah Brown and DJ Chark, I think, could come in at a decent price and give you decent production as a wide receiver too, especially if you were to bring back Zacchaeus, and because the production started to come on the last game or two with Ritter. If you're rolling with Ritter, maybe you just think he needs more time with Zacchaeus. So this guy, like either one of these guys, could end up, battling with Zacchaeus for wide receiver too.
Yeah. Now, so DJ Chark, 6'4", 205.
Okay.
So he's taller. He's almost there with Drake.
Right.
He's about the same kind of build, maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit lighter, but he's in that same ballpark. Dude ran a 4.34 at the combine in 2018. Right. So,
he's not slow.
If he's had some ankle issues, maybe that slowed him down a little bit. But if he gets healthy and he can be that or very close to that, that would definitely. Now, Zacchaeus is a speedster.
Right.
He is a speed guy. So it's not like we didn't have it, but I don't know. Again, I think Zacchaeus, as Ritter did get, once he got in the game, I thought you started to see Zacchaeus come on a little bit as he had a better rapport with him than I guess he did with Mariota. Right. And Mariota, just his deep ball was not good. Not good at all. So maybe Zacchaeus
could be.
I think he'll be back. And I guess we'll talk about that in another video as well. But I do think he'll be back. I think he will vie for wide receiver 2, 3, 4. He'll be in the mix for one of those spots. And if he can show the same growth with Ritter that he seems to have showed the last 4 games, and that continues, then I could see him staying on the team, and what have you, and being a good contributor to the team.
Yeah, because he runs every route that Arthur wants him to run, and he's a tough wide receiver, even though he's a little bit smaller. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Zacchaeus is back. I just want some better competition for that wide receiver 2 spot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up the skill position group. Drop y'all's comments down below if there's people that y'all would like to see, whether it's running back, a tight end, a wide receiver. I thought we were gonna do some honorable mentions on QBs and lump them in there. I don't have any cool little graphics for the QBs, but my honorable mention would be if Jacoby Brissett makes it to free agency. I'd like to see him. He's a guy who can win some games. If for whatever reason, Ritter, if it is Ritter and he falls on his face midway through the season, you can move off of him and Jacoby might keep you in contention or what have you, depending on how you want to hold there. So Jacoby Brissett would get my vote of confidence as far as having a veteran backup who could also help mentor Ritter.
Yeah, I think that's probably most people's number one. As a veteran backup / push for starting push Ritter for starting position guy. I think he's the number one guy. The next guy that I would think of that I would say would be in the running for that would probably be, assuming he gets there, Taylor Heineke. It could be him. It could be Teddy Bridgewater. I think if Teddy doesn't retire, I think I've read something that there's some
rumors,
thought to that he may retire. But if he doesn't, I think Bridgewater is a guy to bring in. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to bring in a guy like Baker Mayfield. I don't want to bring in. There's not really a ton of other guys that you could really, maybe Drew Lock.
Yeah, so I'm not like if Tannehill comes out of Tennessee, I don't want Tannehill here.
No, because he's a starter. Right. He has been a starter. He is still technically the starter in Tennessee. Until he's no longer there or what have you. So he's not going to want to go anywhere and be backup to anybody. And he's proved himself enough to this point that he probably doesn't need to do that. Right. But a guy like Baker Mayfield, he's a guy that I could absolutely see not himself basically, want to be like, hey, I'm the man. I have to be the man,
Hmm.
yada, yada, yada. I think he'll go to a team, but I think he's a guy, specifically Mayfield, that I think uh, no matter how good, bad he does or Ritter does or whatever, he's going to be a guy that I could see the fan base just being like, we need to start
Oh
Baker.
yeah,
He's a
yeah.
much better
Yep.
quarterback. He's this, that, and the other. And I don't want that hanging
Now,
over Ritter for one. I don't necessarily think that would bother him, but I don't want any extra whatever. Because if you're going to bring in anybody besides Brissett, Heineke, maybe a
yeah,
Gardner
maybe Minshew.
Minshew,
Right.
Bridgewater, if you're going to bring in anybody besides those guys, it's going to be somebody who you think is going to
Yep.
start, and that's going to be Lamar Jackson if you want to make that deal, Justin Fields
You want to
if
make that deal?
the thought
Like, yeah.
if you want to make that
Yep.
deal, which what I'm hearing is potentially like maybe a first and a fourth or something
Yeah,
like
which
that.
we can get into that kind of stuff a little bit later on, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that the idea of a Brissett level backup is what I'm looking
Yeah,
for if you're rocking with Ritter. Well, that's
yep,
going to wrap up this position grouping. Next week we will be taking a look at the front seven, which will be D line and linebackers. So
yep.
make sure you stick around there. Keep your eye on the channel as hopefully we'll be doing another Madden Monday. Hopefully that didn't bomb and and what have you. So hopefully we'll be doing another Madden Monday. And yeah, so just keep your eye on the channel as we're always putting out different things and seeing what y'all like. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. That's GRIMM1128. Jonathan.
At Jonathan M. Holder, come say
That's right.
hi.
And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.